Hola, mi nombre es Paulo Tavares, yo soy un arquitecto de Brasil, de Sudamérica. Estoy muy contento de poder participar este año de TVA 21 Academy, del proyecto Organismo. Muy contento de poder hacer este proyecto que me parece un proyecto no apenas muy interesante, pero también muy importante, muy urgente desde el punto de vista de la crisis climática que hoy nos afecta a todos nosotros. También que sea algo importante desde el punto de vista del territorio y de las comunidades humanas y no humanas de los territorios de donde nosotros vamos a trabajar, que son los paisajes de Galicia. Mira, creo que me voy a hablar inglés porque me hace más fácil. Ya, gracias. So for this year, we are going to work in the territories of Galicia. And those are territories, as I have learned in the past months, that have been historically shaped by all sorts of extractive industries, foremost mining industries and open pit mining industries. And interestingly, during the Francoist era, during the Franco dictatorship, new types of extractive industries, besides mining, have been introduced in the region. Foremost, industrial forest. And altogether, all these extractive industries, which are also related to the extraction of water, as we are going to discuss, all these extractive industries combined have made those landscapes a very fragile territory, a very fragile ecology in face of the contemporary issues of climate change. And as we have been seeing in the last years, Galicia is particularly vulnerable to extreme events, climate events such as wildfires. In parallel, and this is fascinating also, Galicia is a territory that nurtures a long and deep history of ecological practices that are rooted in ancestral vernacular communal land management systems. There's a name for that, which is Monte Vecinal en el Man Común in Galician, which means something like the neighbor hill in common hands, which I find very beautiful and very poetic. And most of them, at least as far as I know, many of them have been fractured by the introduction of those extractive industries and extractive policies along the years, but some have survived and have persisted in the region. In continuing their ecologically sound practices based on this communal way of governing and managing land, these territories that are in common hands, they're also known to be landscapes that are more resilient to the effects of climate change, such as, for example, wildfires, which prove that those types of ways of managing and governing and dealing with the land and engaging with the land are environmentally sound and can really offer alternative routes for us to learn and develop social, political, cultural, and technological ways of dealing with the contemporary ecological crisis. So this case study dwells in the post-extractive landscapes of Galicia to explore how natural systems, chiefly plants and forests, but also land and water, can be mobilized as tools of ecological reparation and climatic resilience. While at the same time, forests, water and land, they can function as political agents within forms of civic organization, participatory governance, and earth justice. And in order to bridge this idea of, ecological and historical reparation and how natural elements can be thought as ecological means of dealing with the climate crisis, but also as political tools to allow us to think about the new forms of collective organization, we gave the project the name of Florestania, Florestania comes from a concept that was developed by environmental and indigenous activists in Brazil in the mid-80s when they were fighting the military dictatorship that governed Brazil for 20 years. And it was a military dictatorship that really promoted deforestation policies at many different levels. So Florestania comes from the combination of two words. One is floresta, which means forest, and the other one is cidadania, which means citizenship. So the idea that, the forest being stand and to protect the forest was also a way to protect the rights of being a citizenship, human rights and political and civic rights, right? So really, I think not only is important for us to look back at this concept developed by environmental activists such as Chico Mendes and Ailton Krenak, whose thought is very important for me, but I think also very important for ecological thinking worldwide. But also to learn from these concepts for us to understand how nature intersects with politics, how forest intersects with the civic, how nature intersects with the social, right? And how we cannot think those two separated, how we need to think a politics that is connected to ecology and to natural systems. So there are many strategic approaches and research threads that we're going to pursue to begin with this project. The first one is something that we could call environmental reparation as territorial rewriting, because it's not enough just to protect nature, but we really need to question the categories, the meaning by which nature enters our cultural, political, technological, and legal systems. Another thread is the idea that how these fractured, ruined landscapes left over by the extractive industries can be read as historical archives. And once we read those histories, what are the kind of strategies that we can use to repair both nature and society? We're also going to research something that I'm calling the biopoetics of forest and soil. How plants operate as sensitive agents of not only environmental but also historic reparations. And this is something crucial to us, how we can think historic and environmental reparations together, right? How we cannot detach these two domains. Another thread of research or another strategy that we are going to use in this studio comes from the ways in which philosophers, artists, cultural practitioners, indigenous thinkers are attributing a certain type of agency to non-human beings. And the title of this is How Forests Think. We are sort of borrowing from the landmark book by anthropologist Eduardo Kohn, whose book How Forests Think is going to be very important for us. Borrowing another philosophical concept from another important thinker called Ailton Krenak, an indigenous leader from the Krenak land in Brazil, we are going to work with the idea that the future is ancestral. That is to say, what forms of new political arenas, new political imaginations can we devise for us to create new forms of collective that unite humans and non-humans within the same time of political arena, and where the legal, political, cultural mechanisms that one needs to develop in order for this assembly of humans and non-humans to come into being, which from my point of view is something urgent and necessary to deal with the climate crisis. Finally, we are going to research we are going to try to speculate what would be Florestania today, what would be a forest citizenship today. So for us, to learn from this idea that there is a new type of citizenship that we can sort of draw from forest life is going to be something super important and super relevant for what we're going to try to do in this studio. I'm also very happy to share with you that we are going to work with really amazing local partners during this studio. One is Centro de Arte Fundación María, José, Jové, which is an art center that promotes development by sharing art in all its complexity and diversity. The other institutional partner is Fundación which was created by architect David Schipperfield in 2017. It's an independent non-profit agency that works as a kind of think tank for long-term sustainability of the built and natural environment in Galicia. Galicia is a kind of microcosm of so many global issues that we are facing now, to the extent that it can really be not only a laboratory for us to understand the ecological effects of extraction, but also imagine new alternative ways of collective organization across the human and non-human domain that can face the contemporary challenge of the global ecological crisis. Thank you, and I hope to see you soon in this project, in this very fascinating project. Bye.